Welcome back. In this video, I want to give you some background information on Chinua Achebe and to explain the speech that we read for this week, in which Achebe comments on Conrad. And I want you to draw on Achebe's speech in order to think in more detail about Heart of Darkness. So let's start by discussing Chinua Achebe. Chinua Achebe was a modern novelist, essayist, poet, and cultural critic. He was born in 1930 and he passed away in 2013, so not all that long ago. And Achebe was one of the most widely discussed African writers of his generation. He's most famous for a novel called Things Fall Apart, which was published in 1958. So Achebe grew up in a small town in eastern Nigeria. He attended a selective high school and university. He entered university intending to study medicine, but he very quickly switched over to literary studies and actually began publishing short stories at that time. Now, as a writer, Achebe was acutely aware of the political, social, and cultural impact of colonialism on Africans. In particular, the fact that colonialism essentially erased Africans' knowledge of their cultural and familial heritages. And so he began writing his work about Africa and Africans and for Africa and Africans. This is what he has to say about his own writing. Quote, as far as I'm concerned, the fundamental theme is that African people did not hear of culture for the first time from Europeans, that their societies were not mindless, but frequently had a philosophy of great depth and value and beauty, that they had poetry and above all they had dignity. It is this dignity that African people all but lost during the colonial period, and it is this that they must now regain. So, in Chinua Achebe's essay that we read, he argues that Conrad is a racist and that Heart of Darkness is a racist text. What he does that's interesting is he actually separates out Conrad's view on colonialism from Conrad's underlying racist views about Africa and Africans. So, as Achebe points out, Conrad deplored the colonial system for its brutality and its greed. But this criticism does not negate the fact that Conrad represented Africans as unequal to Europeans, and that he did so in Heart of Darkness in two ways. As Achebe argues, Conrad represents Africa in Heart of Darkness as prehistoric, unknowable, and sort of brutalizing as a continent that is a land. And then Conrad also represents Africans as quote unquote savages. So he basically repeats popular European racist stereotypes in Heart of Darkness by presenting Africans as a people that don't have any language or customs. And one of the things that Chebe draws our attention to is the number of times that Marlowe describes Africans and other Congolese residents as making sort of what he says are uncouth, unknowable, or even animal-like sounds in lieu of language. What Achebe points out actually is that Conrad only allows speech to two Africans in his story. One is the head of the cannibal crew, and the second is the boy who pronounces Kurt's dead. Now, Achebe points out that there are a few moments where Marlowe sympathizes with Africans or even appears to admire them. For example, Marlowe pities the Africans that he finds dying under the tree when he first arrives, and he admires Kurtz's mistress and also the man who tends to the boiler, on his steam shift. But Achebe argues that these moments don't negate Conrad's underlying representation of African people as sort of again savages or animals even. And in fact, Achebe argues, these moments of pity or admiration are actually places where his racism is even worse, because those moments allow him to hide his racist beliefs behind a commonly held liberal belief system among Europeans, and Europeans that were themselves people that held racist beliefs. And that belief system is ultimately that Africans were a people that were in need of so-called civilizing projects like roads, schools, and religion. So I assigned you to read Achebe alongside Conrad because I wanted you to understand how authors can actually create texts that are racist, both explicitly and also implicitly. So authors like Conrad explicitly often use stereotypes and racist language, and you can see sort of shocking language and shocking representations of Africans in Heart of Darkness. But Achebe argues that there are even more sort of insidious works, and he classes Heart of Darkness among those works. And he argues that those works are more insidious because, on the one hand, they criticize colonialism as sort of cruel exploitation, thereby allowing European readers to feel a sense of moral outrage. And then on the other hand, those criticisms don't negate the fact, and they don't in Heart of Darkness, that Conrad represents Africa and Africans as unequal to Europe and Europeans. He argues, in fact, Conrad argues, in fact, through Heart of Darkness, that Africans are in need of so called European colonial improvement projects that were actually intrinsic to the colonial exploitation project. So please let me know if you have any questions about Achebe. I look forward to talking with you about him and Conrad on the discussion board.